In a world of vibrant beauty and deep sorrow, Zeva, a young warrior, grapples with her desire for revenge against humanity after losing her family to them. As danger looms from the monstrous Dran, she faces an unimaginable choice: ally with the very species she hates or let vengeance consume her. Can she choose unity over pain in a conflict that tests her very soul? If you want to dive into real stories of parallel realities every day, in enigmatic, technological worlds that are completely different from our planet, subscribe to our channel and leave your like. Well, let's go. In the bioluminescent realm of Zethra, where the skies shimmered with hues unknown to human eyes and the very air vibrated with ethereal melodies, life unfolded in breathtaking splendor. Towering crystalline structures spiraled toward the heavens, their surfaces alive with pulsating colors that mirrored the emotions of the beings dwelling within. The flora of Zethra glowed softly, casting a perpetual twilight that painted the landscape in shades of violet and azure. Rivers of liquid light meandered through the valleys, nourishing the luminescent vegetation that blanketed the rolling hills and steep cliffs. Amidst this enchanting tapestry stood Zeva, a young Zethran of exceptional psionic prowess. Her slender form was cloaked in a garment woven from the delicate threads of luminescent vines, which seemed to ripple and change color with her every emotion. Her skin bore intricate patterns that glowed softly, a tapestry of her lineage etched upon her flesh. Her eyes, deep pools of swirling silver, held the wisdom of ages despite her youthful appearance. Zeva's hair flowed like liquid night, interwoven with tiny glowing crystals that reflected the stars above. Zeva was not just another inhabitant of Zethra, she was a beacon of hope and a symbol of resilience for her people. Her abilities to manipulate energy and thought surpassed those of any known psionic in her colony. Yet beneath her calm exterior lay a tumultuous sea of grief and anger. The loss of her parents in a brutal clash with human invaders had etched a permanent scar upon her heart, fueling her transformation from an innocent youth into a formidable warrior. Her role in the colony was twofold: a guardian who protected the sanctity of their world and a seeker of truths buried deep within the fabric of the cosmos. Standing at the edge of her colony, Zeva gazed upon the remnants of her family's legacy, a sacred grove where towering luminescent trees whispered secrets in the ancient Zethran tongue. The leaves shimmered with memories, each one a fragment of stories passed down through generations. She reached out to touch the nearest trunk, her fingers tracing the glowing symbols that told tales of unity, peace, and the harmonious balance between all living things. But today, the grove felt different. The melodies were tinged with sorrow, and the usually vibrant colors seemed muted. A gentle breeze carried the distant sounds of her people, soft chants and harmonious songs that rose and fell like waves upon the ocean. But Zeva felt disconnected, an outsider in her own world. The laughter of her parents, once a comforting echo in her mind, had faded into an unbearable silence. The pain was a constant companion, shadowing her every step, fueling her desire for retribution against those who had shattered her life. She closed her eyes, allowing her senses to extend beyond the physical. The energy of Zethra flowed through her, a river of light connecting her to every living being. She could feel the heartbeat of the planet, the gentle pulse that synchronized with her own. Yet, a disturbance lurked at the edge of her perception, a faint tremor that hinted at an impending storm. Memories flooded back unbidden. The day the humans arrived, their massive vessels tearing through the fabric of space, casting ominous shadows over the luminous fields. They came under the guise of exploration, but their intentions soon became clear. Resources were plundered, sacred sites desecrated, and when her people resisted, violence erupted. Zeva had been young then, her powers still raw and unrefined. She could only watch in horror as her parents stood defiantly against the invaders, ultimately sacrificing themselves to protect their home. The years that followed were a blur of training and solitude. Zeva honed her abilities, channeling her grief into a relentless pursuit of strength. She became a guardian of Zethra, her name whispered with reverence and fear among both her people and any who dared threaten them. But the weight of her loss was a burden she carried alone, a barrier that kept others at a distance. As she opened her eyes, Zeva noticed a subtle change in the glow of the environment. The hues shifted from serene blues and purples to shades of crimson and deep indigo, colors that signified warning and unease in Zethran culture. The ground beneath her feet trembled ever so slightly, a sensation that was both familiar and foreign. Turning away from the grove, she made her way back toward the heart of the colony. The pathways were lined with floating orbs of light that guided her steps, each one emitting a soft chiming sound as she passed. Fellow Zethrans paused to acknowledge her with respectful nods, their eyes reflecting concern. Whispers trailed in her wake, but she paid them little mind. Her focus was on the unsettling feeling that had taken root in her core. Reaching the central plaza, Zeva was met by Elder Talis, a venerable figure whose wisdom was rivaled only by the depth of his empathy. His appearance was that of a gentle giant, with eyes that held galaxies and a presence that exuded calm. His skin bore the markings of countless lifetimes, each line a story etched by time. Zeva, he greeted her with a slight bow. The winds carry whispers of unease. Have you felt it? She nodded, her gaze steady. There is a disturbance, a darkness approaching from the stars. It feels different from before, more insidious. Elder Talis sighed softly. The harmony of Zethra is delicate. We must prepare for whatever comes, but we must also seek understanding. Not all that is unknown is an enemy. Zeva's jaw tightened. Last time, we sought understanding, and it cost us dearly. We cannot afford to be complacent. The elder placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. Balance, child. We must balance caution with compassion. Your strength is a gift, but do not let it blind you to the paths of peace. She looked away, her eyes reflecting the turmoil within. Peace is a luxury we can no longer afford. With a respectful nod, she took her leave, the weight of responsibility pressing heavily upon her. As she made her way to the Hall of Echoes, a vast chamber where the psionics trained and meditated, she couldn't shake the feeling that something profound was about to unfold. The hall was a marvel of Zethran architecture. Its walls were made of translucent material that captured and amplified thought energy. As Zeva entered, the ambient glow intensified, reacting to her powerful aura. Other psionics paused in their practice, acknowledging her presence with silent bows. She moved to the center of the chamber, taking a seat upon a raised platform etched with ancient symbols. Closing her eyes, Zeva delved deep into meditation, extending her consciousness beyond the physical realm. She reached out into the cosmos, seeking the source of the disturbance. Visions flashed before her, shadows moving across stars, a void consuming light, whispers of despair echoing through the emptiness. Then, a sudden jolt. A presence made itself known, dark and overwhelming. Her eyes snapped open, a gasp escaping her lips. The chamber's glow dimmed, the other psionics exchanging worried glances. Zeva stood abruptly, her mind racing. This was no mere anomaly, it was a threat unlike any they had faced before. She hurried to the observatory, a towering spire that pierced the sky, its apex adorned with lenses crafted from the rarest crystals. The observers, a group of Zethrans skilled in cosmic perception, were already gathered, their expressions grave. Zeva greeted Lyra, a keen-eyed observer whose sharp intellect was matched only by her unwavering dedication. Lyra's appearance was striking. Her skin bore swirling patterns of gold and emerald, and her hair cascaded like silver threads intertwined with starlight. "You've felt it too." Zeva nodded. "What have you seen?" Lyra gestured toward the central viewing platform. "An anomaly at the edge of our system. It consumes light and energy, leaving nothing in its wake. We've never encountered anything like it." The projection before them displayed a swirling mass of darkness, tendrils extending outward as if searching for something. It was both mesmerizing and terrifying. "What could it be?" Zeva whispered, her eyes fixed on the ominous display. "We don't know," Lyra admitted. "But its trajectory suggests it is heading straight for Zethra." A heavy silence settled over the room. The ethical dilemma weighed upon them all. Should they reach out and attempt communication, or prepare for defense against an unknown entity? The Zethran way was to seek harmony, but the scars of past encounters, especially with humans, had sown seeds of doubt. Zeva's mind was a whirlwind. The teachings of her people urged understanding and unity, but her personal experiences screamed caution and self-preservation. The thought of another invasion, another loss, was unbearable. "We must alert the council," she declared, her voice firm. "Preparation is essential. We cannot assume benevolence where none may exist." Lyra hesitated. "But what if it's a being seeking refuge? Or a phenomenon we can learn from? To act out of fear could close doors to possibilities." Zeva turned to face her, eyes blazing. "And to act naively could spell our destruction. We must protect our world." The tension between them mirrored the larger conflict simmering within Zethran society, a struggle between their core values and the harsh realities of the universe. The council convened in the Grand Chamber, a vast hall where the voices of all could be heard. Representatives from every colony gathered, their bioluminescent markings creating a kaleidoscope of colors that danced across the walls. Elder Talis presided over the assembly. "We face a great uncertainty," he began, his voice resonating with calm authority. "Our choices now will shape the destiny of Zethra." Debate ensued, voices rising and falling like waves. Some advocated for immediate defense measures, others urged caution and further observation. The ethical implications of their actions weighed heavily. Was it right to assume hostility and potentially provoke conflict, or was it wiser to uphold their principles of peace and risk vulnerability? Zeva listened, her patience waning. Finally, she stepped forward. "Esteemed council," she began, her voice clear and strong. "I understand the desire for harmony, but we cannot ignore the signs before us. We have the means to protect ourselves, and we must use them." A murmuring spread through the chamber. Elder Talis regarded her thoughtfully. "Zeva, your courage and strength are invaluable. But we must not let fear dictate our actions." She met his gaze unflinchingly. "It is not fear that guides me, but experience. I have seen what happens when we hesitate. We owe it to ourselves and to future generations to safeguard what we hold dear." Another council member, Elder Marin, spoke up. "Perhaps there is a middle path. We can prepare our defenses without initiating aggression. Remain vigilant but open." The council agreed to this compromise, but unease lingered. Zeva felt a knot of frustration tighten within her. She knew that time was of the essence. Leaving the chamber, she made her way to the armory, a hidden complex where the Zethrans stored artifacts and weapons infused with psionic energy. The guardians there recognized her authority and granted her access. The walls glowed with stored energy, humming softly. Zeva selected a staff, an elegant weapon that extended with a thought, its surface etched with symbols of protection and strength. As she held it, she felt a surge of power flow through her, amplifying her abilities. Outside, the skies began to darken unnaturally. The anomaly was drawing closer, its presence casting a shadow over the land. The bioluminescent flora dimmed, the melodies of the air grew dissonant. Zeva stood atop a cliff overlooking the vast expanse of her world. She could feel the fear of her people, a palpable energy that pressed upon her mind. She reached out telepathically, sending a wave of calm and reassurance. "We will face this together," she projected. "We are stronger than any darkness." But even as she sought to comfort others, doubt gnawed at her. The ethical dilemma persisted. Was she becoming the very thing she despised? Allowing her past pain to dictate actions that could lead to unnecessary conflict? A sudden flash of light tore through the sky, followed by a reverberating boom that shook the ground. The anomaly had arrived. From within the swirling darkness emerged entities unlike anything she had ever seen, forms shifting and indistinct, absorbing light and energy. The Zethrans mobilized, their collective psionic energies forming a protective barrier around the colony. Zeva took her place at the forefront, staff in hand, eyes fixed on the approaching threat. As the entities advanced, they emitted a sound, a cacophony of discordant tones that seemed to penetrate the mind, stirring feelings of despair. Zeva fought to maintain focus, channeling her energy into strengthening the barrier. The first contact was explosive, a collision of energies that sent shockwaves rippling across the landscape. The barrier held, but fractures began to appear. Zeva could sense the strain on her fellow psionics. In that moment, a realization struck her. The entities were not attacking out of malice. They were drawn to the energy of Zethra, perhaps even in distress themselves. Could there be a way to communicate, to understand their purpose? The ethical choice loomed large. She could press the attack, possibly eliminating the threat but at the cost of losing a part of herself. Or she could attempt to reach out, risking vulnerability but staying true to the values her parents had lived and died for. Taking a deep breath, Zeva lowered her staff slightly, focusing her mind on sending a message of peace and inquiry. The entities paused, their forms fluctuating. For a brief moment, there was a connection, a glimpse into a vast consciousness, alien and unfathomable. But the moment was shattered as a surge of fear from the Zethran collective overwhelmed the attempt. The barrier intensified, and the entities recoiled, resuming their advance with renewed vigor. Zeva's heart sank. The path to understanding had closed, perhaps irreversibly. The battle was inevitable. She steeled herself, raising her staff once more. The air crackled with energy as the Zethrans prepared to defend their home. Zeva led the charge, her powers unleashed in a dazzling display of light and sound. As the clash escalated, the line between right and wrong blurred. The ethical complexities of their situation weighed heavily upon Zeva's soul. The tranquil existence of the Zethrans had always thrived beneath the vibrant skies of Zethra, where every sunrise painted the land in radiant colors, and every sunset whispered tales of enchantment. Yet today, the light that typically sparkled in the dew of their grasslands was sullied by a growing darkness, an ominous harbinger of the terror to come. Glimmers of golds and greens, the signatures of life, clashed with the encroaching blackness of malevolence that stalked the land. The celestial portal above roared as the Dran descended, and dread crept into the hearts of every Zethran. As the sun hung low in the orange-streaked sky, casting elongated shadows that danced upon the ground, the first Dran, sleek and serpentine with dazzling scales that shimmered like oil, breached the atmosphere. Their eyes, bright pools of molten amber, flickered with unchecked hunger and a primal intelligence. With bodies designed for speed and agility, they were nature's predators, perfected through eons of evolution in alien worlds. Their predator's grace stood in stark contrast to the peaceful aura that had pervaded the lush flora of Zethra, now tainted with an impending sense of doom. Zeva, ever vigilant, stood on the outer rim of her colony, absorbing the chaotic gusts of wind laced with the scent of charred earth and forgotten hope. Memory played tricks on her, intertwining the present terror with the haunting echoes of her childhood. As a fight-or-flight response rooted deep within her biology sparked alive, glimpses of her past flickered. Her parents' faces illuminated by the candlelight during spirited council meetings, their laughter replaced by silence that echoed through the bitter remnants of grief. With a surge of kinesthetic energy, Zeva hurled herself into the fray, armed not merely with metal but with the fierce psionic powers coursing through her veins. Each thrust of her weapon was a dance of vengeance, each maneuver a poignant melody underscored by the anguish of loss. Her body moved instinctively, a beautifully honed weapon ignited by sorrow, and her spirit a tempest of rage against the encroaching darkness. But the Dran were relentless. As they unleashed their power, siphoning the very essence of life pulsating through Zethra's heart, Zeva felt a piece of her soul being devoured with every creature felled. Chaos erupted amid the sprawling fields, the vibrant landscapes transformed into an unsettling reflection of despair, as hope dwindled with each fading glimmer of bioluminescence. Zeva's heart thundered not just with anger towards the Dran but also with doubt. She grappled with the question, who were the true monsters in this universe? Were it the Dran, who thrived on the devastation of others, or the humans who had already laid waste to her family, sowing discord across the stars? The weight of her hatred bore down, a suffocating cloak that wrapped tighter around her conscience, blurring the lines of friend and enemy. In the air thick with the acrid smell of smoke and despair, a single haunting thought resonated. Was vengeance truly her path? Could her quest for retribution lead her to a sanctuary or consume her like the flame that ignited her anger? The essence of ethical dilemmas spiraled within her. How could she protect her home without surrendering to the darkness that threatened to consume her soul? As the Dran tore through the land, their shrieks gelled with the cries of her kin, and Zeva felt the flames of resistance blaze in her heart. With every adaptive maneuver she crafted, she uncloaked the fear that harbored in the hearts of her people, driving them to fight against the tide of despair. They must assemble, organize, unite against the Dran, but could they trust one another when betrayal laced their recent past? The fray raged on, now a kaleidoscope of movement where the shadows of the Dran intermingled with the vibrant shimmers of her kin. Zeva's weapon cut through the ranks of the adversary, unleashing waves of raw energy that left scorched earth in its wake. Throughout the battlefield, Zethrans rallied, finding courage in Zeva's fury. An echo of her pain spurred the dormant warriors to rise against their fears, blurring the divisions of the past. Amidst the carnage, the battlefield became an arena of transformation. The cries of Zethrans reordered into a battle cry, an invocation of resilience that echoed into the heavens. Yet, even as victory swelled within her grasp, Zeva's heart fluttered with trepidation. Was victory born from unity, or would it merely be a momentary reprieve before they descended back into chaos? Each clash of steel against chitin reverberated in her mind, a constant reminder that victory may come at a price, the price of losing oneself entirely to anger. With chaos enveloping the land, dusk fell heavy upon the battlefield. An otherworldly feeling washed over Zeva, as if she were fighting not only the Dran but also the very essence of despair within herself. The spectrum of emotions, fear, rage, and sorrow, converged into a singular truth. In her desperation to protect her home, she felt the incipient transformation. It was no longer merely revenge driving her, but an agonizing urge for redemption. Redemption for her kin, for her own heart. As the battlefield ebbed into a shocking quiet, Zeva felt the weight of her choices bearing down. The future unfolds like a tapestry of infinite possibilities where the threads of destiny twined through her very being, interlacing her fate with that of her peoples. In the shaky silence that followed, whispers of strategy surged through the remnants of their gathered militia, even as doubts began to flicker like fireflies amidst the shadows. Zeva had assumed the role of a leader, yet the voices within her demanded clarity. What path lay before her in this ever-turbulent spiral of conflict? The same ground trod by her ancestors bore witness to the fight for agency, an ancient chant of resilience that operated outside the realms of vengeance. The weight of her burdens loomed heavily, leaving traces of uncertainty, especially as memories flooded back, memories of familial bonds tied together by laughter and love. Time molded around her like the sumptuous clay of the ancients as she peered into the darkening sky. The scintillating stars above offered no answers, merely a canvas upon which the universe painted her uncertainties, a reminder of her quest fraught with ethical dilemmas entwined in the fabric of war. As newfound resolve took root within her heart, she glanced over the remnants of her people. Their faces illuminated not just by the dying light but by the fresh embers of hope. Despite the scars inflicted by fallen ancestors and interstellar battles, the Zethrans stood together, united in a moment that resided on the precipice of transformation. In an echoing battleground where the once lush flora of Zethra lay scorched and desolate, Zeva fought with unmatched intensity. Every strike of her psionic blade sliced through the air with the force of her rage, but it was not merely the Dran she battled, it was her own tumultuous emotions that raged within her heart. The vibrant colors of her homeland had been rendered dull by the destruction wrought upon her beloved colony. The skies, once filled with shimmering hues of purple and gold, now hung heavy with ash as the looming shadows of the Dran descended upon them. Amidst this chaos, the air crackled with energy, not just from the blasts of energy weapons and the rush of wind from the skirmishes above, but also from something exhilaratingly unexpected. In a swift motion, Jace, a skilled human pilot wrapped in a reflective combat suit, dove into the fray, his starship's engines roaring like a mighty beast. He maneuvered with preternatural ease, the craft dancing through the tumultuous sky as if it were an extension of his very will. Time slowed as Zeva observed Jace's moves. They were graceful yet precise. He soared low, evading enemy fire with a skill that hadn't gone unnoticed by the Zethrans that had gathered, eyes wide with disbelief. In a moment that felt almost surreal, Jace unleashed a volley of plasma shots, targeting a Dran that loomed menacingly over Zeva. The creature's roar of agony shrieked through the air as it crumpled to the ground, creating a tremor that shook the very ground they stood upon. Distrust coursed through her veins as she gripped her weapon, poised for the moment he would betray their alliance. Yet, as they fought side by side, each pulse of energy that surged from Jace's ship sparked a glimmer of gratitude within her. This was the enemy, but could he also be an ally? Questions swirled like a tempest in her mind, clashing with the very beliefs that had shaped her into a weapon of vengeance. In the thick of combat, they exchanged glances filled with unspoken tension. Every moment amplified her doubts and yet, every moment drew them closer. The undeniable synergy between their skills allowed them to foil multiple attacks. Jace's aerial assaults offered cover, while Zeva's psionic abilities targeted the very core of the approaching dangers. The unique combination of air and earth warfare began to change the very nature of how they perceived one another. Beneath the layers of battle, a deeper moral quandary simmered. Zeva grappled with her tightly wound resentment towards humanity, the very beings responsible for her parents' demise. Yet, standing amidst the rancor of chaos, she felt herself wavering. Jace wasn't just a pilot, he was a person, flesh and blood, fighting his battles, just as she was, fighting for his own absolution. Each interaction, each shared glance, sparked a quiet realization. Humanity was more complex than her singular narrative painted. As the fight raged, Zeva marveled at the dynamic of their alliance, a phenomenon as unpredictable as the skirmish unfolding around them. It was as if the battlefield itself was knitting them into a fabric, with each confrontation against the Dran revealing threads of unity, and those threads intermingled with the starker strands of their deep-seated prejudices, a cultural tapestry woven from conflict. They ventured deeper into the heart of the fray, where the remnants of Zethra's wonder clashed violently with the chaotic scuttling and guttural sounds of the Dran. A glistening stream that had once served as a sanctuary now bubbled ominously, a conduit for impending doom. Each battle felt like a duel not just between two races, but between ideals of justice, survival, and the ethical boundaries that define existence. Was vengeance the ultimate quest for Zeva, or could redemption, the very thing she associated with humanity, offer a path of healing for both races? In the aftermath of another skirmish, where the dust settled only to reveal more grotesque remains of the Dran, it became abundantly clear to Zeva that war and vengeance were like the venomous fangs of a serpent. They coiled tightly, inflicting pain on the one who wielded them. With each hard-earned victory alongside Jace, the staggering realization that her need to avenge her family might blind her to potential peace gnawed at her insides. The chaos provided clarity. Human and Zethran lives were not simply entwined through conflict. They were inextricably linked by a shared resolve to survive in an unforgiving universe. The evening descended, casting shadows upon the charred remnants of what had once been her home. Exhausted but resolute, they regrouped with fellow warriors, Zethrans who looked to Zeva for wisdom, and humans who sought direction from Jace. The moon loomed large and watchful, a reminder of what was at stake. They huddled in a tactful circle of war, feeling the overwhelming weight of their mission settle heavily upon their shoulders. The tension was palpable. Willing to listen, they exchanged glances, each lost in thought as they contemplated the precarious balance of trust on which their future rested. In that hushed moment, Jace turned to Zeva, a message that transcended language passing between them. There was understanding in his eyes, a desire to forge a path that neither had believed possible mere hours ago. Together, they drafted plans, daring schemes to unravel the web of deceit that assailed both their worlds. It was a mission that would undoubtedly challenge everything they were taught to fear about one another. As they discussed their strategy, Zeva's heart raced with a mixture of excitement and trepidation. It was exhilarating to consider that as allies, they could confront not only the Dran but the unseen puppet masters that had orchestrated their suffering. Their collaborative efforts merged seamlessly, a testament to the possibility of unity against a common enemy. They would scuffle through the very shadows that once divided them, daring to breach the chasms of pain and betrayal to see the light. Unknown to them, hidden among the crumbling pod structures of the colony were forces much darker and more sinister than the Dran. As the fervor of their plans reached fever pitch, behind the scenes, whispers of betrayal threaded their way through the air. The coils of deceit wound tighter, ensnaring trusted leaders within their grasp, their allegiance swayed by a lust for power and dominion. The ominous undertones of treachery weighed heavily on Zeva as the night loomed heavy with unspoken wickedness. The starlit sky felt oppressively close, almost a mirror of their plight, a celestial echo of the chaos below. They were tired, weary from the battles they had faced, yet invigorated by the remnants of hope blossoming in their hearts. The oppressive air of Zethra seemed to vibrate with tension as Zeva and Jace delved deeper into the unfolding chaos. Shadows danced across the bioluminescent flora that adorned their surroundings, casting flickering patterns around them. Each whisper of wind carried with it ominous overtones, echoing the truth they were hastily uncovering. Betrayal lurked closer than they ever anticipated. The atmosphere was suffused with urgency. They made their way toward the Grand Hollow, a hallowed ground where the Council of Zethra convened. Towering crystalline structures jutted upward into the violet sky, reflecting the vibrant halo of colors that enveloped the planet like a living organism. The ancient architecture, both beautiful and imposing, seemed to mock them as they ventured deeper, with every step weighted by dread and uncertainty. "Keep your thoughts sharp, Zeva," Jace murmured, his voice steady yet laced with the concern of a man who understood the stakes of this confrontation. The lines etched on his face revealed the strain of battles yet to come. Though they fought as allies, a vast world of cultural differences separated them, a chasm of distrust that could only be crossed through revelation. As they approached the dais, where Zethra's leaders typically held court, lively discussions transformed into hushed murmurs. Jace adjusted the grip on his weapon, a slick, technologically advanced blaster designed for precision in the chaos of battle. Zeva's own weapon, a glimmering stave imbued with her psionic energy, thrummed with agitation, sensing the deceptive currents that flowed through the air. Together, they stepped into the chamber, where the council's leaders stood. Elders adorned in flowing robes that shimmered like the nebulae, their various hues symbolizing their familial rights and obligations. Seated among them, Melira, the High Elder, had long been a guardian of peace, her wisdom revered across Zethra. But as Zeva's piercing gaze locked onto Melira's face, something felt amiss. The glimmer of unease flickered in the Elder's eyes, a fleeting shadow passing over a once reassuring visage. "Zeva," Melira beckoned, her voice echoing with authority. "Your return brings hope, but we are engaged in intelligence that demands our utmost discretion. We cannot afford to act rashly." Before she could continue, Zeva interjected, her heart pounding with urgency. "The Dran are not our only enemies, High Elder. We have uncovered plots led by our very own. Your discretion could cost us everything. We must act." An uneasy silence settled over the council. Faces that once bore trust now bore the marks of betrayal. Whispers of doubt flickered like flames within the room, battling against the gravity of Zeva's accusation. It was as if Zeva had unleashed a storm, her voice both a beacon of truth and a harbinger of discord. With Jace standing resolutely beside her, Zeva drew upon the psionic depth of her abilities to project a vision of their discovery. The shimmering light of her energy enveloped the chamber, casting vivid images that danced and twirled throughout the room. Scenes unfolded. Clandestine meetings in shadowy corners, leaders exchanging whispers with cloaked figures resembling the Dran, their motives merciless and insidious. Witnessing this imagery fired questions through the minds of the council. Energy pulsed with discontent. Melira's brow furrowed, revealing the struggle within her conscience. "If what you say is true, then it is true." Zeva's voice rose, an amalgamation of grief and determination. "Time is not on our side. They are manipulating us. We have to confront the traitors in our midst before the Dran exploit our weakness." Instead of solidarity, the chamber erupted in tumultuous debates, voices clashing amid the swirling tension. Each leader weighed loyalty against the prospect of betrayal, contemplating alliances that had once been steadfast. Zeva and Jace stood at the center, the focal point of a moving tide of uncertainty, and as she scanned the council's faces, Zeva sensed something deeper brewing amongst the chaos. A hesitation, a fear of what would be lost if they dared to expose their own. The heavy weight of ethical dilemmas settled onto her shoulders. Would they be willing to take the very souls they had entrusted with their protection and thrust them into the light to face judgment? In a society that thrived on unity, this act would surely tear fabric. Lives hung in the balance, not just those of the infected, but of the very ideals they carried as a culture. "Unity is born from truth," Jace interjected, stepping slightly forward, his own frustration boiling beneath his composed facade. "They've taken our trust and turned it into a weapon. Will you let fear of betrayal overthrow your duty? Choose now, honor and fight, or be swept away in the tide of treachery. Faces hardened, but uncertainty remained. It was a moment crystallized in time, one that demanded resolution but offered nothing but hesitation. Yet, just as Zeva feared their response would fracture into chaos, Melira raised her hand, her voice bringing an unexpected stillness to the room. Let us convene. We will investigate and put forth the due diligence expected of a rightful council. But know this: if shadows are revealed, justice will fall swiftly upon them. Her words carried the weight of ancient tradition. Their deliberation was born out of fear of failure and the possibility of a deeper maleficence. With the council retreating into whispered discussions, Zeva felt the tumult of her spirit. This moment had stretched thin with a looming dread. How could they trust in a web so intricately woven by lies? The array of shadows in their vision made her question whether they had the fortitude to face betrayal when it lay nestled so close to home. The air in the chamber felt dense as the decision to act was postponed. As they departed, Zeva caught Jace's gaze, and within the depths of his brown eyes, she glimpsed a shared burden. It was a reflection of turmoil, doubts about the council's intentions, and concerns about alliances fraught with uncertainty. Only the nights ahead would reveal the truth that lingered in the tides surrounding Zethra. And so, they plunged into the heart of the storm, unaware of what dark apple awaited them, lurking in the shadows of betrayal. The cold moon draped tentatively over the horizon, illuminating the fateful path ahead, one lined with the paradoxical threads of trust and treachery. They marched on, guided by the uncertain whispers that promised salvation yet brought a distinct chill, as questions hung thick in the air. Who truly held the power to define what was increasingly blurred, friend or foe? Amidst the flickering torchlights, Zeva's resolve solidified even as the ambiguity twisted between them, encasing their expedition in an unsettling tension that only seemed to deepen with every heartbeat. In the aftermath of the cataclysmic battle, the once vibrant landscapes of Zethra bore scars that told stories of bravery, loss, and transformation. The air was heavy with the remnants of smoke, a haunting reminder of what transpired. Yet, as Zeva stood amidst the ruins, she felt the faint whisper of hope threaded through the rubble. Each blast that had racked the terrain, each cry echoing through the dusk, had forged something new, an unshakable bond born from despair. The luminous flora that had once danced joyfully under the deluge of the sun now swayed slowly, subdued yet steadfast, much like Zeva herself. Her psionic abilities shimmered softly around her fingertips, resonating with the persistent energy of the earth. With every breath, she absorbed the possibility of renewal, promising herself that this day would mark not an end, but a beginning. Jace stood beside her, stoic yet contemplative. The human pilot, marked by the scars of battle and reminiscent of the avian warriors of old Earth, braided into one enchanting tale of resilience. His sun-kissed skin glimmered with remnants of energy, still resonating from the tumult of battle, while his sharp cerulean eyes flickered with the traces of emotional upheaval. United by the indelible ink of experience, their fates were now intertwined, carved through the fires of conflict. As they surveyed the aftermath, they noticed survivors emerging tentatively from the shadows, their faces mirroring a complex tapestry of emotions, relief, sorrow, and courage. Among them stood Elder Sal, a former leader who had been marred by the treachery of those they once trusted. His once radiant scales dimmed, but there was a flicker of hope as he approached Zeva, his eyes reflecting the weight of years burdened with conflict. "You fought bravely, Zeva," he murmured, his voice shaking. "You showed us the way forward." Zeva acknowledged him with a solemn nod, the frailty of their reality settling over them. "We must rebuild," she suggested softly, though fear loomed like a specter, a daunting task, one that could easily crumble under the weight of betrayal and heartache. But the thought of abandoning this dream to rebuild infuriated her sense of justice. Together, they began assembling a coalition, humans and Zethrans alike, their spirits knitted in shared moments of survival. They convened a summit amidst the smoldering remnants of the battlefield, a space where understanding and healing would bloom once more. It was here, beneath the spiraling radiant canopy of the Zethran sky, that Zeva took the mantle of leadership, offering a speech woven with the threads of grief and resilience. Today, we stand not as separate beings but as harbingers of a new dawn, she pronounced, her voice echoing with newfound authority. Let this destruction be our crucible, a womb from which our newfound unity shall emerge. We will not forget our past nor allow it to chain us to hatred. Instead, our stories shall ignite the flame that drives us toward collaboration. Jace stood firmly beside her, his hand resting protectively on her shoulder. The whirlpool of emotions locked within his blue depths reflected his determination to bridge the gap between their worlds. As the meeting progressed, it became clear that wounds ran deeper than the surface. Generational animosities and misunderstandings needed healing. Discussions grew fraught, tensions flared, but they persevered, each moment stitching the rip in their fates just a little tighter. Over the following days, as they initiated work to restoring Zethra, the true heart of this endeavor began to unfurl. Zeva observed the exchanges between humans and Zethrans, nervous laughs, tentative gestures, shared burdens, as seeds of understanding were sown in the soil of the scarred battlefield. The Zethran artisans taught the humans their ancient techniques of bioengineering, rejuvenating the land with the flora that once flourished. Simultaneously, Jace and his fellow pilots shared advanced technology, bridging the gap of knowledge and skill that had divided their races for so long. It was a fragile coexistence, much like the delicate balance of the planet's ecosystem. But gradually, walls began to crumble. The ruins of the past became the foundation stones of their budding unity. If alien landscapes could resurrect from ashes, perhaps they too could thrive together. In the midst of their relentless work, Zeva discovered the intricacies of both worlds, the human love for invention and creativity intermingling with the Zethran reverence for nature. But as the days progressed, echoes of a distant threat lingered on the periphery of their newfound life. Whispers of the Dran encircled the horizon, a reminder that they were not out of danger yet. Observations made through scouting missions indicated the potential return of the monstrous predators, driven by their insatiable quest for power. Yet, rather than succumbing to fear, the coalition convened once more, the leadership imbued with an urgency harnessed from the hope they had cultivated. The combined forces of their skills, intellects, and emotions would solidify their position, not just as combatants against an external foe, but as a community birthed from collaboration. It was during a particularly vibrant twilight as Zeva and Jace welcomed a new wave of Zethran students into their fold. The young ones, wide-eyed and filled with curiosity, questioned the transitioning dynamics of their societies, prompting laughter, wonder, and hope. In their youthfulness, Zeva and Jace saw rebirth. They recognized that the future rested upon these young shoulders, bright and unburdened by the weight of their ancestors' faults. Days turned into weeks until a synchronicity with nature and technology wove seamlessly into their endeavors, cultivating not only their crops but their trust. They became the architects of their own destinies, forges of a relationship that felt electric, bristling with possibilities that spanned galaxies. Yet, amidst this burgeoning peace, Zeva felt an incessant pull toward the past. The question of revenge lingered. Would it ever truly dissipate, or was it a wound that would never heal completely? The elders in the colony guided her on this journey of reflection, imparting knowledge gathered over centuries. Among them was Neria, revered for her wisdom, her feathers shimmering in the moonlight, adorned with jewelry crafted from the bioluminescent plants that only Zethra could bear. Neria's tales painted tumultuous landscapes of history, conflicts that once felt insurmountable, glimmers of hope and redemption that surged amidst chaos. Through her stories, Zeva sought solace but also clarity, recognizing that the desire for vengeance must be reshaped into a desire for peace. In the thick of meditation, Zeva often found herself near the remains of her childhood home, its silhouette appearing against the vibrant colors of the dawn. If you liked this story based on real events, subscribe to our channel and don't forget to like it. Here you can dive into a different reality every day, where anything can happen. Comment below what kind of story you would like to hear here. Thank you very much for your attention. We are the Sci-Fi family.